welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah. Tonight I am going to be sharing with you guys kind of my May wrap up. So we'll go over my goals that I had written in my book journal and see what I accomplished there, and then also talk about the books that I read in May. An interesting month for me because it didn't go how I planned. It didn't go badly, but I think that I thought I would get more reading in than I did. I think that I thought I would get more creative reading in also, which I don't really feel like I did. But I'm feeling hopeful for June, so maybe I'm just the eternal optimist when it comes to these things. But this was my spread for the month of May. I had the Peter Rabbit washi tape. I had talked about how I got that at Salisbury, and those little stickers, and then some other stickers from my favorite Etsy seller. I'll try to remember to put a link in the description for you for those cute stickers. But I had some specific goals for May, and then I had a whole page here devoted to mood rating. And look, there's just one thing. So I don't know, May was kind of weird, but I did read a pretty lengthy autobiography, and that did take a good majority of my month, but I really enjoyed it. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, let's go over my Spring into Classics readathon that I hosted in April and May. It was my first year for that. It's turned out pretty good. This is super last minute, but this is the deadline, June 2nd, to get your checklist into me. If you did this challenge and you have a checklist finished, then put that in the email, send it to me, and I will put you in the drawing for a $25 gift card. All right, so there was 5 prompts for that challenge. 4 of them were book prompts. 1 of them was a watching prompt. The first one was to read a children's classic, and for that, I read this little The Tale of Benjamin Bunny by Beatrix Potter. So this book is also one of the books on the preschool curriculum goal challenge thing that I'm also going through, and so I kind of got a twofer on that one. So I did enjoy this little story. It was pretty cute. I had read it before with one of my daughters. I always really enjoy the illustrations and the humor. Well, I mostly will get to that in a minute. I read another one this month I didn't like so much, but just for the most part, I really do like Beatrix Potter. Love her illustrations, of course, and I do like most of the stories, so I did enjoy this one. The next one on the list was to read a classic novel or novella, and for that one I read Elizabeth von Arnim's Vera. This actually wasn't what I was planning on reading, but I was doing a little bit of looking around at her books and just reading about her, and I saw this book, and it was described as Wuthering Heights, written by Jane Austen, which was odd and raised a lot of questions for me. But I thought, okay, well, if somebody's gonna say that about this, like, you know, what are they getting into? Well, it was also billed as a Gothic, and so I thought, you know, I'm gonna give that one a try. I talked pretty extensively on that in my last reading wrap-up, so I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but let's just say I was utterly disappointed, kind of grossed out. It is sort of like Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, but it's all twisted and weird. It has that same feel, but it's very triggering, for one thing, when it comes to just bad marriage relationships. In this book, the woman is in a bad marriage relationship, and the guy, he's not physically abusive, but he is super just very manipulative, very arrogant, narcissistic, gaslighting, and it never really gets good. Like, it just doesn't ever get good. So yeah, I was bummed. I did not enjoy Vera at all. Do not recommend, but it did get me something to cross off on my checklist. The next prompt on the list was a classic reread. And the classic that I used for this prompt isn't super classic. My cutoff was 1970, and Agatha Christie's Autobiography was actually published after her death in about 1976, I think. But I went ahead and gave myself a pass on this one because she finished it in 1965. And she tells us that. So just because it didn't get published until later doesn't mean it's not a classic. And it's also Agatha Christie. So definitely giving myself a pass on that one. But I do think it's okay because, 1965 is when she was done. She specifically tells us that. But anyway, this one I highly recommend. 5, 6, 25,000 stars. I adored this. I read this really slow. I actually read it really slow over the course of several months, but I read the majority of it this month and finished it also this month, well, in May. And so I went ahead and put it on this list for this challenge. And I read it really slowly because I didn't have to get very far into it before I realized that Agatha Christie really loved her life. She really made the best of every stage of her life. And I thought if she is going to take the time to tell us some of these really long and rambly stories, then I'm going to take the time to think about what it is that she's writing. And so I would read a little bit and then I would just kind of sit with it for a few days and read a little bit, and just kind of did that up until last week when I just decided to binge read the last 250, 300 pages and finish it up. It is a long biography. It's a little over 530 pages, but I'm so glad that I did take the time to just really think about this. She was such an interesting person. She really is one of my heroes. I wrote in the front of the book, I wrote, Agatha remained curious. She chose to ask questions instead of making assumptions. She chose to see people and celebrate differences, be delighted by them, rather than be prejudiced or afraid. Agatha Christie is one of my heroes. She's classy, resilient, positive, motivated, chose to love life, realistic, and has a dry humor, which I always appreciate. I also wrote down that she wrote at least 44 novels and countless short stories and plays after she turned 50. So I'm thinking about my own self and how much I want to write and how much I just want to write. I want to write a lot, and then I want to write a lot, right? So, and I'm 46, so I'm not too old for this gig yet, right? But Agatha Christie just had a crazy life. I mean, she did so many interesting things. She traveled all over the place. She spent a lot of time in the Middle East with her husband, who is a famous archaeologist, and she just discovered so many neat things about culture. If you look into Max Mallowan, which was her second husband that she was married to for so long and just had such a great marriage with, he has a lot of published material and is credited with a lot of finds. And she discusses some of those in here and discusses the part she played in cleaning things, in cataloging, in even finding things. She talks about that kind of behind the scenes. And so I'm really interested in getting, I think Max Mallowan, he wrote at least one book. I don't know if he wrote more than that, but articles and, just documents out there that describe everything from his point of view. And I would love to get a hold of some of that stuff and read probably a little more technical points of view, right? Rather than the emotional point of view that came from Agatha, and just get his side of things and sort of put that together. I did a lot of research while I was reading this book, just looking things up, looking up names of places that have now been, renamed, and just so much. There's so much in here. She's got advice on writing. At one point she says, I assumed the burden of a profession, which is to write even when you don't want to, don't much like what you are writing, and aren't writing particularly well. She's just got to do it anyway, right? I also like this. Life is really like a ship. The interior of a ship, that is. It has watertight compartments. You emerge from one, seal and bolt the doors, and find yourself in another. My life, from the day we left Southampton to the day we returned to England, was one such compartment. Ever since that, I have felt the same about travel. You step from one life into another. You are yourself, but a different self. And she just kind of goes on about that, about the different eras of our life, the different people we are depending on where we are and what we're experiencing. Just related so much. I related to so much of this. So really glad I read it. The next prompt was to watch a classic adaptation, and again, I did not watch anything except for the Father Brown mysteries, which I have been watching with my husband, and are based on the Father Brown short stories by G.K. Chesterton, which are definitely classics. So counting that, even though I also counted that last month. And then finally for this challenge, I completed this book called The Tale of Three Trees. This is a kind of a really old fable, but this one was retold by Angela Elwell Hunt. And it's a folk tale about three trees and how they have big dreams for themselves, but God has other plans for them. And it's a very short story, but it's really special and it has really pretty illustrations. My mom bought this for me in 2006. I've had it for 20 years now, for my birthday that year, and she got it at the Christmas cottage in I think it's in Sisters, I can't read in Lincoln City, Oregon, on the coast. She went to the coast, so the Oregon coast. And so anyway, that's a special book, so I read through that, really enjoyed that. And so that completes that challenge for me. Now I can't enter my own drawing. However, I am going to treat myself on Thursday with a new book or two from the bookshop when I go out. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, so I'm going to check that off here. And then next on my list, I've got the Reading the Classics Challenge / 50 by 50, which is Anne's Reading the Classic Challenge at In Search of Wonder, coupled with my own 50 by 50 challenge list that I made up last year. And the prompt that Anne came up with for this month, for May, was free choice. May was her birthday month, and so she just wanted to do kind of like a May, mood reading time. And so she said free choice. And I had chosen to read Heartsease by Charlotte Mary Yonge, and I didn't read it. So I gotta leave that one blank. Next up was Historathon Quarter 2 / Medieval Studies. So this year I'm going through a lot of different medieval studies, just kind of mood-led, but I do have a list of, I think, 8 books that I did want to read this year concerning the study of the Middle Ages. For the month of May, I wanted to read The Black Death by David Herlihy, which I did read. It was very informative. I talked a little bit about that in an earlier video, but I learned a lot from that video. I learned a lot about just how the Black Death affected the society after. The society that was picking up the pieces was one of the points that really stuck out to me, and just about how people that were in a lower social class kind of rose to a higher social class just by default, because there was so many gone from each social class, right? And so if you had these, landowners, homeowners, business owners, political figures, religious figures who had died and that spot was open, well, these lower class citizens just kind of stepped into that position by necessity, right? Because society needs to continue on, and therefore they just kind of got a bump up in their class level right away, and the things that they went on to do and manage and perform or whatever in life. A lot about how women also stepped into some of those roles that were predominantly and for men, and just interesting things like that. That never really occurred to me, of how they had to fill those empty spots, right? And who filled them and how they did it. So I really enjoyed that. I got a lot out of that book, so I'm going to mark that one. The next one I had on the list was The Medieval Housewife by Toni Mount. I didn't so much enjoy that one. I didn't find it to be it wasn't an academic read, and I don't think it was supposed to be, but there was a lot of information in there that I just kind of already knew. But one of the things that I did enjoy about that book was that there were a lot of passages from original writings, right? So people's diaries, or just things that had been recorded in different ways. There was a lot of quotes from original sources and sources of the time, right? And so I liked that. And she also used a lot of photography that she had taken at various medieval what's the word? I just went to one like fairs, like a Renaissance fair, right? She took a lot of photographs from that and used that to illustrate the different sections of her book. So I did like that also. I just thought the book wasn't super well arranged also, so that was kind of weird. It just kind of jumped around back and forth on the same subjects, and I don't know, it was just oddly done, but it's okay. I got it read. All right, and then the other two I have on here, Meetings with Remarkable Manuscripts. I've been reading a chapter a month on that one, and I actually was behind one chapter. So I had intended to read two, but I actually did only read one. The one I read was on the Leiden Eratia, and so yeah, I have started, so I did just read that one, but that means I have two for this month to get caught up. So like I said, I'm reading a chapter a month because there are 12 chapters in this one. I'm really, really loving this, and I don't want to just read straight through it because I want to have the time to sort of process through, you know, each different manuscript that it discusses. Each chapter discusses a different manuscript. And like the one that I'm reading now, that I've been reading tonight, is the Morgan Beatus, and that is a book that is in the Morgan Library here in the US in New York. And so I'll read that, and then I will also try and read the next chapter this month, which is on, let's see what that one's on. Hugo Pictor. So I have no idea what that is, but we'll find out when we get there. Anyway, really loving this book. I love Christopher Hamel. He is just such a fantastic, amazing, interesting, inspiring writer. He's funny, and he's just, he makes everything just so just interesting, right? And readable and accessible is that word that I use that I really don't like, but that's what it is. He's fantastic. I actually have two books in my cart on Blackwell's to order by him that are actually cheaper coming from the UK than they are to get here. So looking forward to that. So mark that one off. And then the fourth book that I wanted to read this in May was Medieval Tiles by Hans van Lemmen, which I did not get to that one, so I'm hoping to for this month. All right, and then I had some books on a list that I wanted to do for Jane Austen July prep. So I have some ideas for videos that I was going to do a little bit of research on. And there were 4 books. 2 of them I DNF'd, and I don't think I originally was thinking I was just going to DNF the whole idea of even talking about these during Jane Austen July, but I've actually come up with a video idea that I think I could add these to so that my time wasn't wasted. But my idea was to read these 2 books about Jane Austen's relationship with her friend Anne Lefroy, who was quite a bit older than her, kind of like a mentor. And so I was going to read this one, which is Jane Austen's Inspiration, Beloved Friend Anne Lefroy by Judith Stove. And then I was going to sort of read a little bit here and there from Anne Lefroy's letters. And I started with the biography, and it is extremely tedious. It's just, no. There's actually not a lot of information on this subject. Just, you know, what did Jane write to Anne? What did Anne write to Jane? What did they do together or talk about together? There's just not a lot. And so this author, you know, bless her, but she found every little detail she could possibly drum up to put together in this book. And I just wasn't going to do that. So I read a little bit. I got a general idea of some things that I want to talk about, and I will keep it for further reference down the road. But this is not the time for me to read through that thing. And then also, I will read in this probably the letters, if there are any in here between her and Jane, but I don't think that there are. Just from reading this other one, I don't necessarily think that they thought about each other as much as we might like to believe that they did. But we'll find out. So anyway, but I do have some things that I can talk about in the video, and I probably will read through this a little bit more during Epistolary January, since it is, you know, a book of letters from the Georgian Regency era, and that would be interesting to read just in and of itself. So I don't get to cross those ones off, but my second research project for planning for Jane Austen July was that I wanted to read a couple of books about the Elgin marbles. So these are slabs of marble, carved marble, that were taken, they look kind of like that, just different scenes. These were taken from the Parthenon during the era of the Regency by Lord Elgin and company, and they are in the British Museum, most of them now, and they're titled the Elgin Marbles. So I was curious about them because my daughter was watching a video on the Regency era for a paper that she was writing, and she's like, oh, have you ever heard of these? And I was like, no, I have no idea what that is. And so I got this book on it, which I did read. I finished this last night or the night before, and it is mostly about the marbles themselves, right? And it goes into very deep detail on every single panel. So it is a little repetitive. This copy is from like 1984, so I think that they probably by now have maybe updated it a little bit to be a little bit more engaging, possibly. But it wasn't a bad read. It was just, you know, very tedious. But the very end of it does talk about Lord Elgin and his role and everything they went through during that era, right, of acquiring them. And then there's another book called The Mistress of the Elgin Marbles, and that is about Lord Elgin's wife. And so I have not yet read that. I'm going to take a look at it probably this month at least, take a look at parts of it, skim it a little bit if I don't read the whole thing. But I want to get the general gist of that also for a video that I'm planning to do in July. So I will cross off that book on the Elgin Marbles. I did do that. Okay, and then actually, now that I'm kind of looking at my Goodreads a little better, I realized I actually had two books from Mood Read May. So the first one was The Tale of Little Pig Robinson. This is another book that is on my preschool list. This is another Beatrix Potter book, and it's pretty lengthy for a Beatrix Potter story, and that is definitely to its detriment. I did not enjoy this story. It starts out with one story, and then it flips over to the story of this pig. And basically, it's a little bit, it features like the Owl and the Pussycat rhyme, kind of maybe a backstory or extra story to that. It sort of it sort of brings in a little bit from Alice in Wonderland. And then it ends with the story of Robinson Crusoe, kind of. I don't know. It was really very stream of consciousness. It was really all over the place. I really didn't enjoy it. I just didn't. I don't know if it's just like, I don't know what all of it was. I didn't like the little pig. I thought he was very arrogant and self-centered and had no self-control and just made really bad choices and never learned from his choices. And so I just didn't like this one. Never read that before, and I probably never will again. And then the other book that I read for my Mood Read May was this lovely Jesus Through Medieval Eyes by Grace Hammon. And I've talked about this on a couple other videos. I will not go into this in a lot of detail, but I will link up here for you guys the video in which I discuss this pretty thoroughly. Suffice it to say, this book really did make me think about so many things. It's basically a look at medieval art, medieval depictions of Jesus, the symbolism that they used to tell the gospel story, to tell stories about him, the characteristics that they gave to him. Some of them seem kind of weird to us now, which some of ours probably would have seemed weird to them too. And overall, I think what I learned from it is just to take the time to appreciate other perspectives, right? Other people's point of view. The medieval people were no more or less of a believer than we are today. They weren't primitive. They weren't uneducated. They were just different, right? They had a different cultural experience, a different background, and they were in a different era. And I don't necessarily think that we are smarter more intellectual, better informed in these days than they were in those days, honestly. So those are just some things that I took away. But like I said, watch the whole video that I made on this if you're interested in it. Other than all of that, I read a couple of short stories from Agatha Christie's Miss Marple short story collection. I don't know, I'm not really enjoying these too much. She has them kind of set up like a, I don't know, like a, sort of reminds me of like Canterbury Tales, Tales from the Wayside Inn sort of a thing, where you got this group of people that are just taking turns telling stories. And that's kind of what's going on. But the stories are so short that there's just not much to build up to in order to try to solve a case, right? It kind of reads more like a bunch of police officers sitting around discussing their cases. And it's supposed to be different people from these people are from different walks of life. They're all people known to Miss Marple. And talking about just, you know, I heard this or I experienced this or whatever, and then they're mysteries, but they're only, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 pages of that. And so they just, I don't know, they're just not super developed, so you're just not really following anything. So I will keep plugging away at it, but I'm not loving it. And then finally, I read some from Notes from Walnut Tree Farm by Roger Deakin. These are his diaries. And it's just his thoughts from his time living at this farm. It's set in the English countryside, and I'm enjoying it for the most part. There's a lot that I can't really relate to, but then there's also a lot that I'm just sort of imagining, you know, and trying to open my mind up a little bit. But I am enjoying it. It's a gentle read. It's organized by months, so it is another one that you could read over the course of a year, which I am doing. I'll be done at the end of September. So that's what I did for the month of May. Good month, not fantastic, but not super bad. Kind of glad to be into June, mostly just because that means we only have a few more months until the cozy months come. It's really stinking hot. It was really hot today. It's been really hot in our house, and we got a new air conditioning system last year, and so we weren't really sure why it's not keeping up, but then we realized that there was a problem with our filter downstairs. So my husband got that taken care of. It's cooling off in here finally. And so anyway, if I can't stand it outside, I can always escape inside, and I am so, so grateful for that. I hope everybody is doing well. Let me know what you guys have been reading. How did your May go? And what are you looking forward to in June? Or just say hi, or just leave an emoji, or just something. Let me know you're here. Thank you guys for stopping by, and I will see you soon.